It's my honor today to introduce the Screaming Queen, Screamin Rachael. She's the queen of house music. How's it going?
Oh, it's great to be here with you, George. Considering what's going on in the world, hey, we're still right on target.
Absolutely, and there's nothing better than music to get you by.
That's true.
So
Very
tell me about how you got the name Screamin Rachael. I mean, you're not
well.
loud. You're not a loud person, so
I can be loud, but
okay.
it's more about like the attitude. I can walk in a room and I'm screaming without saying a word.
That's awesome. Your energy screams to people.
Exactly.
Yeah, you
Exactly.
know what? House music. I feel that it was started in Chicago. I know that.
It was.
Kanye West loves house music. He screws around with a lot of those samples and whatever. He actually ended up taking one of your beats or samples and using it in one of his
Yeah,
songs.
he did.
To which I found out that he never actually asked you permission until you used it. Right?
Exactly. It was really a whole funny story because I was watching the news the morning that I was leaving for LA for my DJ gig at the Ace Hotel because I had a residency downtown LA, Ace. Anyway, I'm watching TV and Kanye comes on and he's doing this weird song because it's that poopity scoop song, that he actually used our sample in that crazy song he did. Anyway, I kind of caught the tail end of it, so I didn't like really hear really well what was going on in there. But the whole basis of the song was our sample. And it was a sample from a song called Boom Boom, which was really underground, barely known by anyone, including us. So I thought that was pretty cool that he's a crate digger in that respect. But the thing that happened was I get a call. I'm on the way to the airport, and it's like, oh, guess what? There's a star, celebrity. His name begins with a K, and he wants to use one of your songs. And another hint, his wife's name, begins with a K. So it's just like this whole thing, and I'm going, oh, okay, okay, and then I figure out it's got to be Kardashian and all that kind of stuff. And then so his manager came and flew out to see me at the Ace. And what ended up happening was I said, well, I've got to find out which song of ours you want to use. And he said, well, it's a song named Boom Boom. I said, we've got two Boom Booms. And he said, oh, that's easy. Go to KanyeWest.com because it was already released.
You know how many artists and labels actually steal songs from people?
Absolutely. Happens
You
every
know,
day.
I know a friend. He had this massive song.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this now, like yeah, it's been on rats, but he wrote one of Taylor Swift's bigger songs, and he ended up going to a record label meeting with the intention of getting signed to a label,
Mm-hmm.
and they ended up taking his song and flipping it into one of her songs, and it, the world's against the small artists, right? The world's against the big wigs always have the leverage, right? Because I don't have the money to sue some big corporation, so the artist is always getting taken advantage of. Now in this time,
Mm-hmm.
I believe like house music and all every music genre is going to thrive after this because people are dying to get out to a club, dying to go to a concert, dying to go to a freaking festival for Christ's sakes, man, and then roll around in the mud and put some ecstasy underneath your tongue or something like that and have a good time. That's how we do it, but we can't do that now. We cannot do that, and that's a privilege and a freedom that we take for granted sometimes. But Spotify has stepped up its game in the last few years with the streaming. And how's that? How are you adapting to something like that?
Well, here's the thing, is that really with streaming, it works out okay for record labels, even smaller labels like myself, because we have a lot of content. It is terrible for artists. It is really terrible. In fact, because it's so terrible for artists, we're thinking about other ways to really help monetize artists. We've got a couple things cooking that are already happening. There's a new company called TrackLib that we made a deal with. And with TrackLib, what they do is they charge more because now people are not really downloading. They're not buying those downloads. They're not even paying that 99 cents. They're paying nothing because they're going to Spotify, they're going to YouTube, And those streaming platforms are paying the artists like less than a tenth a penny. So, it's something like, I forget if it's 200 million. It's a ridiculous amount of streams. I mean, you can look it up. I can't tell you
I mean,
exactly.
if I told you I made $100 million off streaming from Spotify, you'd probably think that, I have
I,
a quadrillion streams, right?
I wouldn't even believe it, because
Yeah.
people, I know that you couldn't, because people, I mean, huge, huge hits, being that, with the Kanye song, the one that he already had released without my permission. Well, we went back and we backtracked it. We made a deal with him. At the end of the day, we owned 25% of his song.
Good.
So then you figure, oh, wow, I own 25% of a Kanye West song. I'm going to make millions. Well, even Kanye West, even with hundreds of millions of streams, yes, we made money, and I'm not going to say it was totally, totally low, but I'm going to tell you it's not anything. It's not in the hundreds of thousands. It's not. And we're thinking Kanye West. And when I spoke to Kanye's manager, he said the thing about Kanye West is it's about his brand. It's about Yeezy. It's that. Today's artists, I mean, especially now that they can't perform, the way they're making money, or the way they did make money, was performance and branding. Of course, licensing makes money. If your songs are in movies, if your songs are, television, anything like that, yes, you can make a nice amount of money on that. But other than that, streaming, because now CDs are dead, that's really very much killed what artists make.
Oh, absolutely. And Kanye obviously has the thing where he asked for forgiveness later after doing what he did.
He just
But
does what he does.
he did have to pay. And
Yes, he did.
those guys like that have money because they're endorsements, they're brands. And then that's why they step outside of the music industry and invest in like a clothing line like Drake and stuff like that, right? They invest, they start something else, and like vitamin water or this and that. So um, let's explain Trax Records. You're the CEO, the owner, but how'd you get to that point?
Well, basically, I'm still an artist. I started out as an artist. I started out at Trax Records and kind of worked my way, through to the top of it. The original owner, he was like the designated adult, in the beginning of all this. And unfortunately, April 8th, he actually this year had passed away. But even before he did, he pretty much backed away from the business. And what happened was, I basically have been running things for quite some time. And what I did is the Trax Classics, which were up until recently something that we shared ownership in. Now he's passed away, so that is changing. But the new company, I own the trademark, and I continued with all the new artists and the new label. And it's not really a new label because it's Trax, but you know what I mean? It's separate from that. It's still part of the legacy. And what I feel about Trax is that what we're thinking about is the future legends of house. We're known for all the legends like the Mr. Fingers, the Frankie Knuckles, the Marshall Jeffersons, the Robert Owens, myself, Screamin Rachael. We're known for this. However, now we have new legends that are coming out with great new music. And people are responding very well to the new music. And we're excited about everything we're doing. And as I said, we've got other things that we're working on to really help to monetize the artists. But luckily for me, Trax is a brand. And that is a really, that's a great statement to be able to make. I have people that have tried to say, I want to buy your trademark. Because when you really think about it, as far as what goes on, even with these artists or what goes on with me with Trax, the actual brand is the most valuable thing these days. It's the brand.
It's how you stand out, right? The brand, how recognizable you are, and
Yeah.
Trax is spelled Trax, right? Trax Records, not Trax, Tracks, like Trax, music tracks. This is a it's a house tracks. I don't know how you would explain that, but it's not spelled the way you think it is, right? So,
No, it's not, and that's what makes it cool. Because
yeah,
if it was spelled the old way, it wouldn't even look cool on a logo. You know, the logo itself is really cool and recognizable, and people love it. And just the idea that in today's world, we don't talk about songs anymore. We talk about tracks.
and
So,
how many artists do you have on your roster?
well, the Trax label has actually thousands of songs, and there are quite a few, you know, artists on the roster. These days, we're narrowing it down a bit, and we're really trying to go for a more like specialized group of artists. However, you know, we have had, because we've been around for a number of years, so we have, you know, many artists that are associated with the label, and that is kind of the way labels are doing this more and more, because no labels, really including the majors, are really doing artist development. I
No,
should
there's no money for that, and there's
no,
no there's no
they're not.
there's no one willing to put the time in anymore. It's not like
Nope,
it used to be.
nope. You have to come to any label, including Trax Records, ready to go. Once in a while, what will happen is somebody will come to Trax, and if I really believe they're talented, I won't put up the money to produce them because I don't know if that production is going to work, but I'll help them to get their music produced. And then after it is produced, I can decide like, okay, is this going to work for my label? And then if it is, we can, you know, we can move on it. But we don't really produce it ourselves. We do have great people that we work with, and I'll go into the studio. I just went in with a young artist called Alex, who's a rapper. He's actually out of New Orleans, and produced an album on him. So I put the time in, I kind of helped directed it. I helped him with, you know, writing some hooks and things like that. That's very unusual for me to do that.
Mhm.
I didn't finance it, but I did feel that he had an incredible amount of talent and it was worth putting some time in. That's unusual though, because like you said, nobody puts the time in.
And it's about right now. It's about singles and sampling and that's how it's all going to come around in the circle for house music.
It does.
The best days of house music are ahead of this time right now.
Yes, you're
Um,
right.
the sampling, you go back in a couple of songs, like who the
Mhm.
hell's whose voice is that? What is that? Right? Then you look at the track and you look at some of the credits. It's like, well, this I investigate stuff like this. So I'm like, oh, this guy, he's part of Trax Records and he has this many songs. So I'll listen to more of his. And then maybe you had some more of your artists collaborate with him. So now I'm into like 3 or 4 other artists. But yeah, the circle's gonna start to come full circle. I don't know if that's kind of like a weird way of saying that, but
But
um,
you're right. You're actually very on target. And as a matter of fact, when I started telling you about TrackLib, the whole thing about TrackLib is rather than selling downloads, they're selling the ability to the public. Now, if a regular guy buys a loop, you can actually buy loops at TrackLib and you can experiment. Now, if you make something with that loop and you actually want to release it commercially, then you pay quite a decent sum of money. But if you want to experiment like a guy in his bedroom who wants to like play producer, TrackLib has got great things and they can try, and who knows, they may make a hit, and that if they do, they have a way of licensing directly through TrackLib. So we feel that this is going to really help monetize the music now that streaming has taken such a big part. So I'm with you 100% that this new idea of sampling and creating new hits out of things that were hits will help to monetize for the artist as well as monetize more for the label as well.
and now it's not about mixing on like vinyl and everything's accessible for you, right? So you're able to get it electronically and produce records in your bedroom, which is absolutely amazing at the quality, the high quality that you get. That's if you know what you're doing, right?
Well, yes, but also you've got to consider technology has come so far. Look what's happened with an iPhone camera. Okay, people are shooting movies on iPhones because the cameras are so sophisticated. And the same thing has happened with computers and producing music, where we would, back in the day when we began, go into a studio and possibly pay $350, $400 an hour back then to really be in a sophisticated studio with a SSL console and 2-inch tapes and everything. Now we can do that on a computer. I
Yeah.
mean, so it's just what's happened with technology, and you're very right. So technology has made it possible for people to actually make these things. Now the thing
And
is,
now that $300-400 an hour can go towards your
absolutely,
marketing or like your pizza for the night, you know. So like it all works out in the end. A lot of people don't know how to market themselves properly.
well,
Like,
that's a big thing today.
yeah,
Is I think that because people are putting it's something like 40,000 songs a day on Spotify, something like that. If you consider the odds, then you have to consider that if you don't have a brand, how do people find you? Well, the way that people can find you if you're not a brand, if you're not Trax, if you're not whatever, if you're not, I don't know, whoever, Kanye or whoever, the brand, then you really have to be adept or hire people who are adept at social media marketing because it's everything.
and there's places like Fiverr for that, but you got to pay, right? And
Do
it all
you
comes down to payola every time. Like, sorry to interrupt you there, but every time I want my song on the radio, well, this is how much it's going to cost. It could cost $5,000. It could cost $100,000. How serious are you, right? How serious are you? Like, I think a lot of artists these days, to be
Mhm.
honest, because I have been in a band, they
Mhm.
don't have a plan, right? You've got to
No,
have a plan on how to succeed, and you guys, everybody's got to be on the same page as well.
it's one of the things about today's world. I think a lot of young people are becoming what they call a superstar DJ. And, usually superstar DJs are also producers. And I think the reason why that's working is because it's so hard to be in a band and get everybody to be of one mind, without breaking up, without this guy wants this guy wants that. They don't like the fact that the lead singer's up here in front. So this whole idea of the DJ, when you think of the David Guetta, Carl Cox, Steve Aoki, all these people that are doing it now, and that you even see like, little kids, they have their toy DJ mixers because it's gotten down to DJ culture in today's world. But a lot of that I think has to do with it's a lot easier to get along with yourself, tour with yourself. It's kind of almost put bands in a really difficult place if you think about it.
I would have to agree on that. I can do a podcast successfully by myself, but if I were to do it with another 5 or 6 people, I don't know, or even someone else, I was doing it with somebody else, and it wasn't able to work out because things got to be on your schedule, right? You got to do it the way you want to do it, and then it all falls on you. Something about the self-onus thing that really kind of turns me on about this whole thing.
It's
Um,
pretty cool. And if you look at it, especially since the pandemic, I mean, God bless us all. Hopefully this will end soon. But you had to see that Jimmy Kimmel, everyone was doing exactly what you're doing now. The way we're doing your show is the way they're doing theirs at the moment. So you strip away all the special lighting, all the studio, all the techs around you that are doing everything, and you're coming down to where we are right now today. And in a way, that's great. But so the pandemic, it's been a horrible thing, but it's also been an equalizer in some
yeah,
terms.
it's leveled a lot of playing fields for a
It
lot
has.
of people, right?
Yes,
Over
that's
this pandemic, I'll be honest with you. One day I woke up and I had 5 listeners on a podcast, and then a couple weeks later I woke up and I had 150,000 people hit me up. So and it's so weird that how all this happened during the pandemic. I started doing this show in a way to because I'm able to still work because of the broadcasting thing, but
mhm.
um just a way to talk to people. Like, I'm in the house with my family, and I love my family, but they also hate when I just talk over and over again. And that's just what I like to do. I like coffee and I like talking to people. And what better way than just meeting new people every time, right? So this is what it's all about. And you're right. It's leveled the playing field for a lot of
Yes.
people. You know?
It has, and the same way that you are talking about what you've done. One thing is that because of the pandemic, one of the first things, because one of my artists, Jason Chaos out of New York, said, well, why don't we be the first record label to just start a virtual online party and do it once a week? So we started doing that, and now that's been building up. And the great thing about it is, it's like you said, you enjoy doing what you do. Well, I enjoy DJing and performing. So now I'm doing it virtually. And as as much as I miss an audience, the one cool thing that's happened from doing it virtually is that people from around the world that, let's say, I couldn't go to Paris and see a certain friend, or I couldn't see a friend I had in England or whatever. Now they're able to check in, send me a text, a heads up, something. So in other words, or even like at the end of the night, we do like a Zoom where a lot of us just get together and chat like we're doing now.
Have a
And
few
so,
drinks and, you know, just let loose. You know?
yeah, just it's great because
You throw a couple screams in there too, or?
yeah, why not? I could do that. So basically, it's I don't know. There are the good parts and the bad parts, and you have to make lemonade out of those lemons. You know, that's a kind of an overused phrase, but this pandemic has certainly taught us, I think, how to appreciate what we're missing, as well as how to go down back to basics and make something out of it.
Absolutely. It's kind of like a restart for a lot of people.
It is.
It really is, because people have lost their jobs, and I'm not laughing at that, but it really is like a restart. It's like knocking over those bowling pins and, well, let's do it again.
Yeah, completely.
So you're from Chicago?
I am. You're talking to me. I'm in my living room in Chicago. I've got my little DJ set up behind me. You know, my 303 drum machine thing is there, my
No
mixer
way.
for the acid and stuff like that.
That's
Yeah.
cool. You know what, Chicago? They're famous for house music. They're famous for Kanye
Yeah.
West. Like, honestly, Kanye West, I don't care what anybody says about that guy. I freaking dig his records. I'm a rocker, but I dig them. You're also popular for your Chicago Bulls and your Chicago deep dish pizza.
Yes.
I've heard, because one day this show is going to go on a bit of a tour, and we're going to try every coffee in the world.
What's your favorite coffee? I want to ask you a question.
Oh, well, that's my next question for you.
Okay.
So, yeah. So my favorite coffee is, well, right now I'm just, well, the reason why I'm drinking a lot of water on the show, not to push anybody away from coffee. I am drinking coffee. Today I drank a hell of a ton of it. A lot of French press coffee most recently. You've had that before, right?
Yes. So you do
Yeah.
your own, like with the little press. And
Yeah. I spent $50 on some like aluminum stainless steel thing, and I'm using it. And it's the first time I've actually wanted to screw around with coffee a bit more. I like the Turkish coffee, mostly black coffee, right? Like that's the best part, the dark roast coffee, and trying different things. You know, I'm not a cappuccino kind of guy, but I'm the kind of guy who will sit down and maybe, like, if you have a Keurig machine or whatever, I'll sit down, I'll have six, you know, just chill
yeah.
out. You know, just being a musician and podcasting, having a family, like, if you don't drink coffee, like, you better go to bed at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because you're done. What about you? How do you take your coffee?
Well, funny that you said you don't like cappuccino, because I like cappuccino. So I like cappuccino, but I like many types of coffee. And, you know, I like to brew it myself. I have one of those, what is it called, that makes the really strong coffee, the little silver. It's kind of got, I don't know what they call it, but anyway.
We got to figure this out.
That thick coffee, the bottom, you know, when you put it on your range, and then the water bubbles up through, and on top you then get the kind of the stronger brew. So that's how it is. And it's like what you call it? That's like a Turkish coffee type thing.
Yeah, Turkish coffee is good.
Espresso. What am I saying?
Espresso, okay.
That's what it is. Homemade espresso. You
I
know,
honestly stopped listening to you for a second. I was watching your body language. I thought you were going to say French press, but you couldn't figure it out. So I was like,
no.
Yeah. Espresso is the bomb. You know, espresso is the bomb.
Espresso.
You don't want to have too many of those, but it's good for performing and your creative juices. That's for sure.
So I like it. So I like to make espresso sometimes. And I usually like, different flavored beans, like the hazelnut kinds, but I love coffee too. So, you can get with the espresso, the cappuccino, the Keurig, all that kind of thing. I love coffee also.
You're listening to Screamin Rachel, the queen of house music, the one and only Meet Me for Coffee show. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. This is fun.
It's been a pleasure.